3 of IFPDA Print Month. I'm Jenny Gibbs, Executive Director of the IFPDA, the IFPDA Foundation, and the IFPDA Print Fair, which will be held March 27th to the 30th, 2025 at the Park Avenue Armory. Today we're in for a treat with a conversation about the magical, mysterious process of artist and printer collaboration with some of the best in the business, Maria Ancona of 10 Grand Press, Felix Harlan of Harlan and Weaver, and Andrew Mockler of Jungle Press, moderated by Britany Salsbury. I should also mention that we have an in-person event tomorrow evening, Wednesday, October 16th, with an exhibition by Harlan and Weaver at their very first pop-up gallery, and that's tomorrow from 6 to 8 p.m. at 30 Orchard Street. You can RSVP for that on the Print Month calendar. Today's program is presented by the IFPDA Foundation in collaboration with our friends at the Association of Print Scholars. The president of APS, Galina Mardulovic, will be introducing Britany and moderating the Q&A. Galina Mardulovic is curator at the Smart Museum of Art at the University of Chicago. She specializes in the history of printmaking, the 19th century, and Russian art. Prior to the Smart, Galina held teaching and curatorial positions at the University of Cambridge, SUNY Purchase, and the Mead Art Museum at Amherst College. Her research has been supported by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Getty Research Institute, and the American Philosophical Society, among others, and has been published in Print Quarterly, Art History, and the Burlington Magazine. Galina received her PhD in History of Art at the University of Cambridge, where she was a Gates Cambridge Scholar. And with that, I'm very happy to turn this program over to Galina.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for that introduction. And on behalf of APS, I want to say how excited we are to partner with the IFPDA on this incredible series of programming. I'm grateful to the IFPDA for the opportunity, and I want to thank Jenny and Michelle for the phenomenal work in putting this all on for us to enjoy. While some of you might be familiar with the Association of Print Scholars, I want to take a brief moment to tell those who aren't. APS is a nonprofit organization that aims to encourage innovative and interdisciplinary approaches to the history and practice of printmaking. We strive to facilitate dialogue and promote scholarship in the field by sponsoring a wide range of workshops, grants, awards, and events, such as today's panel. Anyone is welcome to join, and for those interested in doing so or learning more about APS, please visit our website at printscholars.org. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Britany Salsbury, who not only organized today's panel, but also co-founded APS 10 years ago this fall. Very exciting for us. Britany Salsbury is curator of prints and drawings at the Cleveland Museum of Art. During her time at the CMA, she has organized numerous exhibitions, including on contemporary women printmakers, 19th century French drawings, and Nicole Eisenman, A Decade of Printing, which in part inspired today's panel. Prior to the CMA, Britany held curatorial positions at the Milwaukee Art Museum and RISD Museum, as well as research and fellowship positions at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Morgan Library and Museum, and the Art Institute of Chicago. Britany is currently working on the upcoming exhibition, Caramo Artists, Inc., Printmaking, Race, and Community, which will open at the CMA in March. And please welcome Britany, who will introduce our speakers for today.
Thank you so much to Galina for the introduction. I want to thank Galina and Cabell On for their work helping to organize the panel today. It's wonderful to see APS in such great hands, and I'm so thrilled to be presenting today or for facilitating this conversation today on behalf of APS. And I also, like Galina, I just want to thank Jenny and Michelle for making sure everything is run so smoothly with this event. So I'm going to start out just to give you a little bit of a roadmap for our conversation today. I'm going to start out with a little bit of introductory material, and then we will just go ahead and dive into the conversation between our panelists. And we'll be sure to leave time at the end for questions from the audience. And you're welcome to put those questions at any point in time into the Q&A. And they won't be visible to you, but they will be visible to us, and we can share them with Galina and I can share them with the panelists at the end. So please feel free to jump in with questions and thoughts as we go. So just to tell you a bit about our panelists, Maria Ancona is an artist and master printer who founded 10 Gram Press in 1999 in Brooklyn, New York, and has steadily expanded operations since. In 2005, she opened a satellite workshop in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she continues to do her own work as well as collaborate with artists in both locations. Ancona is known for her ability to work in a variety of media and her dedication to experimentation and process. Editions are often variable and frequently incorporate innovative techniques and materials. Marina's publishing and collaborative projects have been exhibited at the Guggenheim Museum and Museum of Modern Art, among others, and are part of the contemporary print collections in the Museum of Modern Art, Whitney Museum of American Art, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, among many others. Founded in 1985 by Felix Harlan and his late wife, Carol Weaver, Harlan and Weaver is a New York-based studio specializing in intaglio printmaking. The studio collaborates with contemporary artists to create finely crafted etching prints, fostering innovation and artistry in the field of printmaking. Harlan and Weaver, and you're seeing Nicole at work in the shop there. They have published works by artists including Louise Bourgeois, Kiki Smith, Stanley Whitney, Nicole Eisenman, and James Sienna, among others. And then last, but certainly not least, Andrew Mockler, this is a view of his space here, is a painter and master printer living in Brooklyn, New York. At Jungle Press Editions, he collaborates with artists in lithography, etching, woodcut, and monoprint. He's taught at Yale School of Art, the Rhode Island School of Design, Columbia University, and Hunter College. He has lectured at Cornell University, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Christie's, New York, and the Baltimore Museum of Art. He's had a fellowship at the Fine Art Works Center in Provincetown in 1990 to 1991. His works in painting and printmaking have been exhibited in galleries and museums, including the Addison Gallery of American Art, the Herbert F. Johnson Museum of Art, George Billis Gallery in New York and Los Angeles, and Metaphor Gallery in Brooklyn. And so just very briefly, I wanted to just give a few images related to the sort of the origin story of this conversation, which was Nicole Eisenman, A Decade of Printing, which was an exhibition that took place at the Cleveland Museum of Art in summer 2022. And you're seeing a few gallery views here. It focused on the role that prints have played during the past 10 or so years of Nicole's career, beginning with an intensive year that Nicole spent focusing on printmaking. Nicole had some background in making prints and had done them occasionally, but in 2011 decided to work on prints specifically and exclusively. And Nicole had gone through a really life-impacting breakup and was rethinking art making around this time. And Nicole described being attracted to printmaking because the routine was so different. Rather than working in the studio, you go to a show or to a shop and you work alongside or even collaborate with someone else. So it's, totally different process of thinking and working. Nicole chose the 3 specific print shops that we will be hearing from today to work with over the course of about a year. And the CMA's exhibition highlighted these collaborations and focused especially on the process that Nicole and the printers developed together. And so there were lots of working proofs and variations, different states, things like that, as you can see, as you've been able to hopefully see in these installation shots. And so one of the the best things about working on the show was working with the printers and hearing the stories behind how the prints were made. And so I'm hoping, we can emphasize that today. But given the emphasis on process in the show, I'm hoping to just get us started by learning more about how each of the panelists actually made prints with Nicole. And so I asked everyone to do a little bit of pre-work and to suggest or to select a print they had worked on with Nicole, so that they could share a little bit about how the print was made, what it was about to them, and like how it came about, technically how it was made. And so we're going to start with Marina, looking at Nicole's Man with the Moon. And Marina, I will turn it over to you.
That's fine. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Britany, Jenny, and Galina. On the first print I chose to talk about with Nicole, that was the first print we did. It was a puzzle piece wood block, and this was based on an image that Nicole had been looking at of a print of Heckler. And I was so excited to work with Nicole, and it was really exciting to see how flexible and interested she was in experimentation as well. And so on this print, it was really fun to kind of subtract one of the puzzle pieces and add an underlayer and kind of play with the structure of the matrix. Um, that was the first one. I don't know if you want me to go more in depth or if we should move on to the next
Yeah,
part.
why don't we move on to the next one? And it would be interesting, I think, to hear about like how different it was working in like these are I don't think you could like come up with two more different techniques than like these two.
Yeah,
So
and
just
this,
let me know when I have like your great video clip too. Just let me know when to move forward to that.
sure. This was a really exciting print because I had never done anything like this, and neither had Nicole. And this was, Nicole is so incredible with technology and playing with the old and the new. And this was done by taking, Nicole had gone to the Picabia show at MoMA and taken images from Picabia paintings and then used the Snapchat app to superimpose those paintings onto their face. And then we took those, made some scans, kind of altered them a bit. And then there was an added layer of um, engraving where you can kind of see all the line work that was put in. And also kind of in the bottom yellow one, you can, in red and yellow, you can kind of see the added painterly layer. That was also another plate that was added. And then you can go to the video. And this is kind of showing, they were solar polymer plates that were used. And so now we're adding the silver layer on top of this layer. So it was a very complicated print, and it was a very experimental print for us. We had never worked like this before. And that's kind of the fun part about working with Nicole, because you're always doing a new way of printing. Even though you've done these techniques before, Nicole always wants them to be put together a little bit differently. So that was kind of an exciting thing for me.
Yeah. Good reveal.
Yep.
And you have Honey Bear.
And then with Honey Bear, that was also another technique. I've always loved collagraph because it's kind of a rough style way of printing, and it's also using materials that are not expensive. And so this is a technique that I kind of have seen some great prints from the 70s and 80s, but I haven't seen that many artists work with since then. And Nicole really liked the idea, since Nicole works with sculpture so much, of bringing that sculptural element into the printmaking work. And this plate is built in a very simple way using cardboard, mat board, collage kind of style, and then being inked up in an intaglio way where the ink kind of clusters in these grooves. And then when it goes through the press, it squishes out slightly different each time. And I think Nicole liked this kind of idea that this kind of clumps of ink would just come out in kind of slightly different ways each time.
I have your video.
And then I love also Nicole's use of technology and experimentation. And there's always kind of this playfulness that comes along. And this was for a show at the University of Massachusetts that we were all part of as well. And this was an animation they did for an intro.
So great. And then you ultimately, Nicole, you did a few more polygraphs with Nicole, right?
We did. We've done 3 others, and this was the starting one. This was the first one, and then we did a few more that you can see on my site at 10
Great.
grams. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Then I'll turn it over to Felix to talk about Nicole's watermark. And we were able to, through some fabulous loans from Felix, we were able to show the different states of this, or like iterations of the development of this print in the exhibition. And so Felix, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about print.
Okay. I think we're connected now.
Yeah, I can hear
Yes,
you
here we
and
are.
see you.
All right, great. Well, first, thank you, Britany, for putting this on. It's a very interesting and a little unusual to have this kind of discussion between three printers who worked with one artist. I chose Watermark because I think it illustrates the way Nicole built a print, basically an etching with us. And there are many states which I know were exhibited in Cleveland at the Cleveland Museum. And that, for me, was very interesting to see on the wall of a museum in frames, not just sort of in our workshop. I think that was kind of a special experience. This print, it was a relatively complicated one color, one plate print. I say complicated because of the layering of technique that occurred, and because Nicole was interested in a print that the Crommelink brothers had made with Picasso, where they very cleverly were able to do line etch and aquatint in one go to initiate the print. Nicole, we had a book of Picasso's prints at the workshop, and Nicole looked through them and was kind of inspired by this particular late Picasso print, which also is a stage set. And I think that in a certain sense is reminiscent of this composition where the artist is having breakfast and looking at her daughter, a niece, and her partner, Victoria, and Victoria's father in their vacation home in Maine. So there's a lot going on in the print just in terms of narrative, which I think was complicated by the way that Nicole dedicated herself to getting this print just right in the end. There were many states, I believe there were close to 20 states, and 8 of them were exhibited in Cleveland. The shop, I think we like using aquatint. We like familiarizing artists with that process and all of the different things you can achieve with it, with tone and texture. We also found it was necessary to remove the aquatint in places where it was too dark. And Nicole was very skillful at manipulating the materials, the metal itself. That's about all I have to say on that one.
That's great. Thank you, Felix.
Sure.
Oh, and there's an image of Nicole working on the plate with you.
Yeah, she's doing spit bite with, it looks like nitric acid.
Yeah.
The plate was
one more.
burnt with spit bite, also with deep tray etches in that very dark area of the tabletop. That was a long tray etch, which Nicole took a scraper and reduced the dark area in places and created a kind of texture as well.
Would you say that Watermark was the most complicated print that you made with Nicole, or?
Well, the large beer garden was certainly complicated.
Mhm.
In a sense, though, I think the Watermark was more condensed. I think there were a few techniques in the beer garden that are not in Watermark, but I would say, apart from scale, they were relatively equal in complexity. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And I'll turn it over to Andrew, who has chosen his lithograph Tea Party to talk about to start with.
Okay, great. So the origin of this one kind of has a similar background in a way as far as with the late Picasso. Nicole started this large lithograph, which is maybe 3 by 4 feet. So the stone is very substantial, even just moving it around requires, it's a couple of 100 pounds, requires, a hydraulic lift. And so you're moving it back and forth. But she focused in on this political theme, the Tea Party. You see this kind of fat cat and a tri-corner hat guy, and then the Grim Reaper, the skeleton figure, all holding on to this scythe with an American flag attached to it and a pineapple on top, which are kind of symbolic elements. So we had been working on this large stone, and you can see on the edges, there's the figure of the straight line of the top of the stone is bumped in and out, and there are little divots from around the edges. And what had happened before I got the stone was through kind of mishandling, sometimes the stone gets chipped and kind of loses a bit of its symmetry on the outside edges. But she had drawn this image of the Tea Party figure and the skeleton and the man. And then we visited the Metropolitan Museum print study room, where there is a full collection of these late Picasso etchings. And in some of them, Picasso had used what looked like a kind of a mixture of oil and water. This kind of like turgid, bubbly thing and technique in the background to kind of give this kind of weird, atmosphere in the background. So she's asked me, can we do that on the stone? And, being like wanting to, do what she wanted, I said, sure, yeah, we can do that. So never having done it before. So coming back to the print shop, for lithography, all of the image that you put onto the stone is a combination of pigment, which is the black pigment, and grease. So grease is really the element that when it sinks into the stone, creates the image. So what we did was we flooded the stone with water, because the drawing of the figures was already on it. So we opened up the stone again and flooded the top part with water in those areas that kind of look like a maelstrom. And then she took the oily ink and kind of wove it into the water and let it kind of bead up and move around and create these kind of weird oily clouds. And then down on the bottom as well, she did a bunch of that with, say, the pools of water that are around the legs of the different figures. And so in this, I really feel like in this one, she wanted to make a kind of, it's almost like a tour de force of all the different kinds of ways that you can draw on a stone. So you've got the touche, you've got this kind of very delicate crayon work of the strange ear on this man with the tri-corner hat. You've got very, very dark touche, and then you've got these very delicate areas of shading on the figure, on the two figures. And then we wanted a kind of a color to marry all of those tones together. And we picked what's called a rainbow roll, which is a gradually changing color from one flat area of color to the next. So from the bottom, you have this light blue that kind of blends up into this kind of murky greenish color on the top. So that color is printed as a separate plate, and then the rest of it is where the white comes through is not on that plate. So you have this kind of greenish background, and then the figures kind of stand out in front of that.
Great. gonna stop sharing my screen, and then you're all, maybe our panelists can all, welcome to turn on your cameras now. We can discuss a little bit more. But Andrew, maybe I'll continue with you because it's like, I'm thinking conceptually about the idea of the panel being about printer artist collaborations, and one thing that really stuck out to me about the way Nicole used lithography is that as an art historian, it's surprising to me that someone who, I think, had Nicole used lithography very extensively before working with you.
No.
That's what I thought. So I mean, it really stands out to me how invested Nicole was in mastering all the different ways, as you sort of mentioned, that you can use lithography. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit just about how you started working with Nicole and how that collaboration came about, how it developed, and sort of
Oh,
how you saw your role in
okay.
the collaboration.
So we were both teaching up at Bard, and we would sometimes share a ride back and forth the same day if we were teaching the same day. And I said, you should come and draw on a stone, and so then she came one day and drew on a fairly small stone. I'm trying to remember which one it was now. It's like a single figure. And we proofed that and went through a couple of different, color changes and permutations. And that was the year that she, had stopped painting and put all her paints in a box and painted all her walls white. And so then we were proofing that, we printed that, and then she said, well, now do you have another one? And so it kept going with that. And the first ones were small. There were some were kind of like domestic scenes. There were different figures. And then it gradually I ran out of stones to work on with her. And the only one that was left was this gigantic one, which is substantial as far as getting it ready. The old image has to be, grinded off with a heavy steel disc that you spin around over and over again for hours and hours until it gets the smooth surface back again, and you have a fresh, grease-free stone that can then receive new ink. But she basically maxed out, the available stones that we had to work with, which is exciting for me. It was like a 1 day a week. I think it was every Tuesday she would come, and we would just pick up where we had left off, and she always wanted more. So it was kind of amazing to see.
And one of the things that sort of surprised me about the loans that we had in the exhibition from you was that you had actually made like 2 intaglio prints with Nicole at one point, right?
Yes, those were kind of a resist relief, so that the image was down underneath, the surface was the clean
right
line area, and then that was underneath, kind of intaglio. And then we also printed those as relief prints too. So there were 2 different versions, which was not easy. It took me a long time to figure out how to print them as reliefs without the kind of squishiness of the roller going down and hitting the in-between areas. So it's a bit of a kind of like a learning curve.
And so that was something that was new for you too.
That was new for me because I had never really done relief etching before.
Yeah. And I think maybe Marina, I'll turn the question over to you next, just since I think you're the person who has worked in the greatest range of different techniques with Nicole, just like giving us a little bit of information about how you, like, the sort of like backstory of how you first connected with Nicole, how you started working with you, how the collaboration developed a little bit.
I had known Nicole kind of through mutual friends. And I had always been hoping to get Nicole in the shop, and it was one of those things that I was just waiting for the right timing for that to happen. And when Nicole decided to do this year of printmaking, that seemed like the best time to have that happen. And I can totally relate to what Andrew was saying. I had the same thing. Nicole works so fast, and there's so much that they are trying to make all the time. I remember just like putting things in front of Nicole to keep them busy. Like I would put a plate, I put a dry point plate in front of Nicole I didn't want Nicole to leave the shop. I was like, don't leave yet, just stay busy. So yeah, it was that kind of thing where, I mean, the fluidity is incredible. The way Nicole works, it's just so fluid, and yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then so I think if you get the award for like the greatest number of different techniques that you worked on with Nicole, I think Felix, you seem to have created the largest number of works with Nicole. I know that we had a lot of I think we had the most loans from you and like the most different states in the show. And it was like really fascinating for me and for a lot of people who came to the show to see how you would kind of work like forward toward a composition, but then also sort of change things sometimes as you went. And I'm thinking of like Contagion, where you worked with all the different colors and then ended up with like a black and white print. And so I wonder if you could also share just a little bit about how you started working with Nicole and how that collaboration developed.
Well, we were introduced to Nicole by Faye Hirsch, a historian and writer, mostly on print. And I think Nicole was, researching workshops that were available. And so she visited the shop with Faye and decided that it would be suitable for her. So she would come to the shop once or twice a week, and we started on the small side, and then gradually, as she became more comfortable with all the different processes, we increased the scale. Nicole, as everyone else has said, works very quickly and very intensively. So we would always be ready for her with fresh plates or proofs for her to look at. You mentioned the Contagion, which was not released in color because Nicole was working towards a show, and she decided that the etchings would all be in the black and white range. Later on, she did rework that. We had begun to work with color and then put it aside, the extra plates aside, and eventually she decided that she would like to see it printed in color. So we already had the plates made and the colors selected, so we just had to go back in addition. Yeah, it was a very interesting and kind of exciting year, almost a year we spent. We had quite a few people working in the shop at that time, so we could cover a lot of ground fairly quickly. I could delegate different things to the other printers who were there. So I think if there were a lot of plates, it's because, the shop was kind of equipped to do that at that particular time.
That's great.
Yeah.
And of all of you, I think Marina, you've continued to work with Nicole a bit after the sort of year. Has anyone, for Andrew and Felix, for you, was it primarily that 1 year, or have you continued to collaborate at all?
I would say that we have been, back and forth a little bit talking about it, and she's made some starts, but it hasn't been the kind of intensive.
Mhm.
We did two etchings.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it hasn't been like that, intense.
Yeah.
Period.
And Felix, have you worked with Nicole anymore after that 1 year?
Yes, we, I think it was at the end of last year, began an interesting project, which were Nicole, because of her, interest in all of the sculpture she's made, and this kind of interesting combination of sculpture and printmaking that I think she might have developed primarily with Marina. She wanted to have an etching printed on plaster that would be incorporated into a sculpture. And in fact, we did that with copper. We kind of mimicked the colograph technique as best we could, but ended up doing it on copper and with some engraving included. And that was printed onto a fairly large piece of plaster, and it is now part of a sculpture that I think might be going to be shown in her upcoming exhibition at Zwirner Gallery. We also have gone back into an image from 2011, 2012, that was incomplete, but it's, you know, the plates were there, but we've been adding color to it. And I think in spite of Nicole's very busy schedule, we'll be able to bring that to some sort of completion this year.
So we have two new editions coming out
Yes,
this year.
as Jane, director,
Thanks, Jane.
reminds me, there are 2 editions we expect to publish this year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And the Marina, could you share a little bit about the how things have progressed, or like, you know, how you know, you moved on working with Nicole after the special year of printing?
It started out as almost like a catch up because there was so much work to produce. And then we've just continued to make new work and experiment. And I feel very lucky for that to have been able to be a possibility. And we'll also have a new wood block coming out this fall.
That's awesome. Great. So I'll ask one more question, and then I think we'll turn it over to some of we have some good questions in the Q&A that I think overlap with some of the things I wanted to talk about. And so I'll ask one final question, which you know, keeping in mind that this panel is arranged for APS. APS, you know, is an organization that is made up of the different types of people who work on prints, including scholars and curators. I was curious to hear from the 3 of you how, you know, thinking about in the context of an exhibition, what it made you, if it made you rethink or reconsider anything about Nicole's work, about your work with Nicole. And then like a, you know, a second part to that question, if there's anything you wish scholars or curators understood about the work that you do with artists like Nicole, that you would like to share with the group that we have today. And maybe I will start with Andrew, just since you're the top left of my screen, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, I think what's good about seeing it in an exhibition is that you get this sense of it's kind of being on its own and separated from the context of where everything is always constantly moving in and around the print, as far as when it's getting made. And you tend to be kind of immersed in this process, and up until the point where you feel like this is the BAT, this is the thing that you're going to make, then in addition of, and then it's a very different kind of a process from working with the artist. Then you're really much more focused on, you know, a craft that is kind of like a different mindset with repeatability and making sure that everything is the same. So seeing it also in an exhibition, especially with, you know, the broad sense of the broad work that she's done, you know, in etching and woodcut and all the different colograph and all the different kinds of printmaking she's done, you get this feeling of, wow, like there's such a variety and there's such a playfulness and a way of working that is so inclusive that is very rare, I think, as far as what a lot of artists want to do is, you know, once they get their thing and focus in on it, they want to have something that's repeatable and something that their audience will embrace because they know that this is the thing that they're doing. And Nicole seems like, you know, she's gathering in so much stuff from so many different sources and is really playful. The act of playing and trying new things is just very refreshing. you know, and
Yeah,
it always,
the source gathering really stood out to me too. I mean, like I think each of you mentioned to me independently, like just, you know, looking at Picasso prints and books and at the Met Study Room with her. Um, and so it does seem like that was such a big thing.
and it comes from everywhere too, you know, culture
Mm,
high and low, and, you know, signage, and, you know, different, like her family, and, you know, it's very, it's autobiographical, but it's all also very ecumenical as far as
mm.
everything is equal, and I'm bringing it all together in this format kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I know what I totally agree. And I feel like in a different way too than Nicole's paintings. Like I feel like it comes out in a very specific way in the prints. And Felix, maybe I'll like turn the question over to you next, just since I know you came and you were able to we were able to spend some time in the exhibition. You were able to see it. Is there anything that made you like seeing the show, thinking about the prints that you would loan to the show that made you think about Nicole's work differently, or anything you wish that curators or scholars understood about, you know, the way that you work with Nicole?
Well, I think I could hardly put it better than Andrew did. I think he stated the um, the excitement of seeing the work outside of the studio, outside of all the messes and everything that's going on in the studio, and to see it kind of filtered through a kind of curatorial eye in terms of selection and presentation. That it's a little bit intangible, but I did feel differently about the work, seeing it in the context of a museum.
Mm.
I think, you know, curators can contribute that by sorting through everything that goes on, and in the end, kind of resolving all of the, you know, maybe the unfinished elements of the studio practice. There was a kind of finality about seeing it on the wall in a museum. You realize, okay, this is a body of work that existed during a period that was made during a period of time, and now there's some sort of finality to it.
Mhm.
You know, I think you know, curators have a lot to contribute in that way to just to our understanding about what printmaking is in a shop working with an artist. Uh, to us, sometimes it's all about scheduling and, you know, getting the next person in,
Logistics.
getting the plates ready in time, you know, so we don't get to stand back from it that much. You know,
Mm.
it's once it leaves, once the prints are signed and they leave, that's a whole different thing. So
Yeah. Well, then you think about the work so differently. You know, if you've spent time with it as it changes and develops, as opposed to like the way you know it when it comes to you fully formed. You know, you have you have more of a broader your knowledge has your knowledge base is broader. You have a, you know, a different kind of understanding of the backstory of it, which I think is
yeah.
wonderful. Which I think really came through in the show.
And I also think having it in a museum which has a very broad collection of not only a very significant print collection, but a kind of historical survey, if you might say, was also useful because Nicole is someone who looks at art a lot of all different
Mhm.
periods and has sort of absorbed it into her work. So for me, that was kind of special. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first print that we acquired by Nicole, I believe, was the print after Heckle that Marina spoke about first, because we have the Heckle in the collection and you can see them together, and it sort of contextualizes the work in a different way. So yeah, I think that that really did come through too. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And Marina, I will turn the question over to you as well.
I would agree strongly with what both Andrew and Felix said, and then just add into that for me, it was really and great honor to be in the museum, but also to be there with my fellow printmakers. I admire both Andrew and Felix so much, and I feel like being in that grouping really made me see the prints and how different printmakers work, and what Andrew does is so different than what Felix does, and just being able to get excited and see how both of them worked with Nicole, it was really exciting for me to see all that.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll turn it over to the audience questions. Alina, I don't know if you want to get us started or.
Yeah, very happy. I think actually Marina's last point kind of touched on the
transition.
question. Yeah, great, beautiful transition. And by the way, I should say this was incredible. Thank you all so much for sharing all of this experience and your working processes and conversations with Nicole. This has been so wonderful. But the question is, how do you think about or view your own authorship when creating work for, with another artist? Do you see yourself as collaborators, as tools for the artist, as an extension of the artist? In other words, how do you see your hand and aesthetic figuring into the final work? It's a very big question, but I know that's something that a lot of people, curators and scholars, are always curious about when they think about these very collaborative processes, and how do master printers see themselves, want to see themselves, think of themselves. Marina, do you want to go first?
Oh, I mean, all three of those, I would say. I would like to think that each shop is different and can contribute different tools and knowledge and space. You know, I come from also years of printing in other print shops where I've learned other techniques. So I feel like I've been able to bring all that to the table, all these experiences. And then the idea is to really assist the artist and make it as fluid a process as possible for them to get the most out of it.
That's wonderful. What about you, Felix? How do you think?
Well, I see the role of the printer and the role of the printer publisher as being slightly different, but in general, I believe that what we do at Harlan Weaver is just to be a supplement to what the artist wants to do. You know, we have to figure out how to assess what they're interested in doing, either by having them come in to look at prints or studio visits occasionally to get to know the other work that they do. And then after a period, we, if an artist has not had experience making prints before, we sort of review possibilities, you know, and make suggestions. But I've always thought that no printer has ever said they want to see their hand in the work. You know, you do different things in the studio, but they're not always collaborative. You know, we have to sort of find the right language to talk to the artist about what they're interested in doing, or what they like or what they don't like. That's basically it.
Thank you. What about you, Andrew?
I would say that too, as to continue that thread, like to bring out the most and the best that the artist can do with their work. And we're kind of providing the tools and showing them how to use the tools in a way. And you can see, you know, the different outcome in the three shops is, you know, they have a definite kind of strength. Each of us has a way of working, and the way that Nicole brings the two ways of working together, her ideas and the techniques of each of the three of us it's a kind of a testimony, not well to her, that she's able to not to try to want to make the same print over and over again. Like she's always trying to reach out for something new in what she's doing, and you know, to make it fresh. And you know, she has a very wide range of techniques and of sensibilities, and she has her style is very eclectic, so that she can kind of draw on a lot of these different ideas and bring it in, and somehow it all becomes an Eisenman print. you know, it ends up being recognizable, even though they vary so greatly from print to print.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Britany, do you want to take the next one? Or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah,
Happy-
sure. I'm happy to share the next. So the next one was a question about someone who uh, agrees with us. This discussion is fascinating and is very interested in the push and pull of the dynamic. What is the art of stepping in versus holding back? I mean, I guess this kind of builds on the question that we just discussed. You know, so stepping in versus holding back, and whether there were any disagreements at any point. And more logistically, how did keeping track of materials and expenses work?
Well,
Expenses.
yes, expenses are, it's necessary to keep track, and we all do. And, you know, we were invited. Sorry, Andrew, I'm not stepping on
No,
you.
I wanted you to, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we had to keep track because basically we were invited to publish. You know, there was no publisher beyond the three of us. And so therefore it was necessary to kind of know what we were doing. Carol Weaver and I did not really know Nicole's market. There was nothing really to base the project on, other than that we liked her work a lot and we liked her proposal. And it seemed like just a great thing to do. So we didn't know where it was going to go because there was no real conclusion to it, other than there was a sort of time frame. So we just kept producing work. You know, every week we would meet with Nicole. As far as the back and forth between printer and artist, I have never said disagree. And one of the questions, I'm sorry to backtrack, that we were supplied with was, do you disagree with an artist, and how do you resolve that? But I would say I never have disagreed with an artist. There are some times when I wish that we had stopped a couple of states earlier, because I personally liked it better. But the artist is the one who decides always, you know. So as a publisher, I suppose you could say, well, I don't really like this print very much. I don't think I can sell it. But, you know, that's a whole different role that you're getting into there. The creating a print with an artist in a workshop it's a little bit more free and easy, you know. I don't think about, is it going to sell? You know, that's not something that comes up very much. That's about all I have to say.
I've been in situations with artists where I'm like, oh, you sure you want to do that? And then they do it, and then you're like, wow. But with Nicole, it's always more exciting. Like, can we do that? Can we? Is it gonna work? You know, it's more that experience.
Unlike the person at the person who had the question asked a little bit about like when you would step in versus hold back. Was that a thing for you working with Nicole?
Well, there's always a give and take. I mean, a lot of the time it's just the work being done, like they have to do it on their own. So it's not, you don't want to step in and watch every move that's being made. You're very involved with the technical aspect of making sure that the materials that are being used for the drawing, the way it's etched, everything is going to lead up to the image that they want it to be. But it's all, you really have to know when to just let them, you know, do their thing and work on the drawing. And then you can kind of sense, you know, as you get to know someone, when it's a good time to introduce something else, you know, maybe offer, what if we did this with it? What if we put this color with it? Or what if we, you know, added a tint here to bring this area together tonally? And so you get either a yes, that's great, or no, I want to keep this. And it's you know, hand in hand most of the time.
And I feel like that, Galena, that's kind of a natural transition to the last question. If you want to take that, we can wrap up with that one maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And I think this is kind of hoping to go beyond just working with Nicole, but as studio collaborators, are there any characteristics of an artist's inner sensibilities and working process that you might direct them toward a particular printmaking technique? Or do you encourage them to experiment with various, excuse me, disappeared?
Moves it over.
With various techniques. Today's artist is one who's curious in different possibilities. And I just want to add that the question finishes with thanking you all for your tireless dedication to collaborating with artists to further their visions.
Very nice.
Yeah. How do you think about, working with an artist, learning their inner sensibilities and seeing if there's a way to direct them, or is it a go get them kind of approach?
Well, if I might start off, a lot of artists have a sensibility that that they have in the other work that they're making, whether it be sculpture or painting, that they will bring in. And there are different techniques in printmaking that kind of match up with the way that their drawing has been in these other areas. So you can kind of follow that. I would say that you start out very kind of broadly, as far as offering many different kinds of ways of drawing, and then you pick and choose. It's experimentation, then observation, then synthesis, really, so that you have, let's all look at the results of what happened here, and then we can pick 1, 2, 3, we like this, we didn't like that, and then move on through 2 or 3 stages more, and it gets closer and closer. Does that sound? So it's, yeah, kind of like that.
I would also just add, it's really nice to be able to build with an artist and a relationship. The more you print with an artist, the more you create a relationship and kind of a unspoken language where you can be more intuitive and more able to kind of collaborate in a way that's creates more fluidity.
Okay, I'll add that, and I don't know if this really answers the question, but at the shop, we've sometimes really enjoyed and learned a lot by working with artists whose work we were unfamiliar with. Sometimes, and usually happens with contract jobs where the publisher will say, I would like this artist to come over and see if they would like to work with you. And that's a very unexpected kind of situation. It goes beyond, let's say the personal taste of the printer, what I like, what I don't like in art, so that occasionally is the biggest challenge. And I think I've sometimes learned the most from those kind of situations where I wouldn't be able to anticipate what the artist needed from the shop. Nicole, I think it was fairly clear what she would work with, but occasionally there are artists whose work is just completely unfamiliar to me, and I find that very interesting.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think on that, unless Jenny wants to come back, go.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you. Wow, that was a great conversation. Thank you, Felix and Marina, Andrew, Britany, Galina, and the Association of Print Scholars. And thank you all for joining us today and for those excellent questions. We hope to see you on Thursday for our next program, which is always one of the highlights of Print Month. That will be Print Study Day, presented by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, this year focusing on graphic cultures of Latin America. So we'll see you Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Yep, very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.